Welcome to your daily writing habit, episode number 772. If you are writing a book or thinking about it, or maybe you've started writing your book but you need some help getting it done, or perhaps you're at the stage where you need help reaching more readers to let them know about your book, you are in the right place. Good morning. Happy Thursday, everyone. I'm your host, Christine Whitmarsh. If you're looking for me online, look for Christine Inc., like that stuff we write with. Each day, I'm sharing with you the writing habits I've learned over my 19 years as a ghostwriter, book coach, and author. I have found that three things in particular have a huge impact on your success as an author, and they have the ability to turn someone who barely, maybe kinda, sorta, only sorta, sees themselves as a writer, turn that person into a published book author. Those three things and my three pillars here in the show are writing fundamentals, productivity, and mindset habits. Here's today's quote. When we go online, we enter an environment that promotes cursory reading, hurried and distracted thinking, and superficial learning. Even as the internet grants us easy access to vast amounts of information, it is turning us into shallower thinkers, literally changing the structure of our brain. Nicholas Carr. And let's talk about that today. Once again, happy Thursday. Do you think that being online constantly is maybe killing our ability to read and comprehend books? And if so, how will that affect authors and the future of publishing? As a science geek and a former neurology nurse, I'm fascinated by the human brain. When I was a nursing student, I actually got to see one up close. The surgeon insisted that I stand up on a footstool behind him and watch the brain surgery he was performing over his shoulder, which alarmingly reminded me of the Junior Mint episode of Seinfeld. I stepped up and fortunately didn't drop anything down there. I found myself peering down at a real live human brain, pulsating in perfect time with the heart monitor a few feet away. I was in awe. This gelatinous-looking alien mass of specifically organized pasta strands was essentially the circuit board of the human body. I've been hooked ever since. Although I was a little disappointed that it didn't have the cool blue electrical pathways running through the brain, like, the commercials and documentaries, whenever they show the brain, there's all the computer pathways. So a couple decades later, and I'm now extracting books from people's brains and naturally fascinated by all things writing and reading. And now there's this thing called the internet that we can use to communicate. But the catch is, it can communicate back whenever it wants. This includes interrupting our trains of thought, sometimes completely derailing them, which is inconvenient to say the least if you're trying to do something requiring mental concentration, like writing a book. A few years ago, I started noticing the effects of these interruptions on my own brain. Phones go flashy, inbox go dingy, writing go stoppy. The more frequently I allowed interruptions, the more my overall concentration was affected, even during the periods of time in between when I was using these devices. Even when they were off, it was affecting my brain. For instance, if I spent 12 hours a day allowing myself to be interrupted, phone on, browser up, tabs open, it was incredibly difficult to then switch gears and perform high concentration tasks like reading, writing, ghostwriting for clients, and any other sort of creative problem solving or critical thinking later on in the day. Without waiting for science to confirm the connection between the internet and how our brains work, I started making adjustments as to how I chose to allow technology access to my brain. I intentionally started spending less time online and engaging in more quote-unquote unplugged time, writing rough drafts with a notebook and pen. About 4 years ago, I realized that my habit of checking my phone was derailing my thought trains, so I deleted every app from my phone to avoid the temptation. I also began working on the habit of making myself stop before unconsciously grabbing my phone and checking it. Checking your phone, we're always checking for things. Asking myself what I was actually checking for, and if I didn't have a good answer, I put it down. Along the way, I started noticing articles exploring if and how the internet is changing the wiring of our brains, especially when it comes to reading long-form written pieces, like this episode today, if you were reading it, or also books. Some of the article authors presented evidence that as human beings, our codependent relationship with the internet is killing our ability to read things longer than a Facebook post. I left those articles with the unsettling question. Well, if the way we use the internet is keeping us from reading books, how on earth will we be able to continue writing books? I should note that this concept of the internet rewiring our brains seems to be a disputed one, with many writers and researchers stating that it's simply not true, and certainly it's not that simple. Also, recall from my nursing school story that I didn't see a single wire in that patient's brain. Despite my fascination with this topic, I'm not out to settle any kind of neuroscience disputes. I'll leave that to the experts, and I'll continue focusing on memoir writing, but here's what I am out to do. Number 1, master the awareness, operation, and preservation of my own brain functions, especially as related to technology, reading, writing, and other critical thinking functions that require long, deep, uninterrupted trains of thought. Number 2, continue reading up on the subject. And number 3, share what I find with my fellow authors like all of you. I would suggest you begin your own exploration on this topic with Nicholas Carr's book, The Shallows: What the Internet is Doing to Our Brain. It's a 2011 Pulitzer Prize nominee in general nonfiction, and of course I will drop a link in the show notes so you can get a copy of that book. In addition to what he said in our quote of the day for today's episode, Carr also said this: "The internet is an interruption system. It seizes our attention only to scramble it. Every time we shift our attention, the brain has to reorient itself, further taxing our mental resources." So yeah, definitely get a copy of Nicholas Carr's book, The Shallows, and let me know your observation about how technology affects your ability to concentrate, whether reading or writing or any other concentration tasks. Please drop by my Inc. Authors group on Facebook and let me know your thoughts on this subject. I also dropped that link in the show notes. Thank you for joining me here on Your Daily Writing Habit, where I am helping you write and finish writing an awesome book. Until tomorrow, happy writing.